Good afternoon. My name is Kimberly Shelton, and I'm the Assistant Parks Director for the City of Everett. This afternoon, I'll be presenting information about the health and condition of the 68 trees remaining on the 9 blocks of Colby Avenue between 10th and 19th Streets. Additionally, I'll be sharing some ideas that Parks has about the eventual replacement of the Colby trees as they near the end of their life cycle. We'll discuss an area on Colby that might be a perfect location to do a sample planting for some new tree species. And finally, I'll share some ideas on criteria we could use in the future to help make decisions. In the fall of 2019, Parks hired 2 independent companies to perform health assessment of Colby trees. The reports were received in November of 2019, and no action was taken in 2020. In February of this year, 2021, Parks removed 8 high-risk trees and began corrective pruning to several others based on these assessments. So, as of today, there are 68 London plane trees remaining on the Colby Strip. The trees are believed to be between 75 and 85 years old, and the average height is about 70 to 80 feet. In preparation for this presentation and a park board presentation in May, the park's internal arborist performed his own assessment of the remaining trees to determine if there were trees that were declining past a point of no return. He found 10 trees that had obvious pest and disease issues from which the trees will not recover. While these trees are low risk at this time, they will continue to decline and will eventually need to be replaced. Additionally, there are 3 trees on the 2019 external assessment that were rated at a moderate risk that we will continue to keep a close eye on. I'd like to acknowledge that while the declining health of the London plane trees on Colby Avenue is our largest concern, we do have several Colby residents who have shared their negative experiences with the trees. While most Everett residents have the pleasure of driving past the trees on their way into and out of downtown, some of the residents on Colby Avenue have a vastly different experience. I'm sharing the experiences of a few households, and this is in no way should represent all Colby Avenue resident views. In this first photo, you'll see pictures of some of the limbs that have fallen from the Colby trees. Not only are the roads affected, but some neighbors are experiencing root invasion on their sidewalks and entrance steps to their property. Also, the London plane trees not only lose their leaves in the fall, like other deciduous trees, but they lose their leaves in the spring and summer months as well. These leaves and seed hairs not only create daily cleanup for Colby residents, but they cause skin and lung irritation for some people. These photos are from the spring, and this is a photo from the fall. What I think we must acknowledge is that the remaining Colby trees are nearing the end of their useful life cycle. While the trees may not officially die for several more years, their steady rate of decline will increase their risk of damage, substantial limb loss, and more. Discussions need to start happening now so that we have a plan to replace the trees and keep Colby Avenue as a beautiful shaded oasis we all enjoy. I'm sure many of you have noticed that there are already several patches of Colby Strip that are sparse of trees. Parks is proposing that we begin discussions around replanting the Colby Strip with a variety of tree species that will grow to be significant shade trees, but whose leaves and root systems are more appropriate for median planting. These efforts will take time, and the sooner we start, the sooner the substantial saplings will grow into significant shade trees. When we reach a point of replacing the aging London planes, Parks is recommending the planting of no more than 7 trees per city block. The new trees, which I will show you photos of soon, would be substantial saplings, meaning we'll buy the largest version we can afford and safely plant with success. After significant research, Parks is asking that the community consider the following 3 tree species. The first is the emerald sunshine elm. It's the smallest of the three recommendations, growing to about 35 feet tall, and they grow fast. It's also insect and disease resistant and will tolerate heat and drought. The next tree is the copper beech. It's the largest, reaching about 90 feet tall. It's a slower growing, but is long lived at 150 plus years. They are also heat and drought tolerant. And the final tree species is the scarlet oak. It's in the middle with regards to size, growing to around 70 feet. It has a well-behaved root system and grows fast. It is also heat and drought tolerant. All of the species will showcase brilliant fall color. The beech and oak will produce nuts as they mature, which will provide a food source for birds and other native wildlife in our area. Here's a rendering of what the three species would look like on a typical Colby block at the time of planting. We acknowledge that this is a significant change initially, but here's what they would look like after 5 years. Now we'll move on to some recommendations specific to how we will determine when it's time to reach out to the public about replacing trees. From a tree by tree perspective, Parks plans to internally assess the Colby strip each year, looking for any significant decline or damage. Additionally, every 5 years, Parks is committed to getting an external consultant to assess the trees and provide an independent recommendation. Parks will follow the recommendations of these professionals and remove trees as they decline. Once there is a half block area with few trees, Parks will reach out to the community, much like tonight, to discuss the area in question and hopefully gain buy-in to begin tree removal and replacement with the new species discussed. Parks will occasionally receive a request for the removal of a specific tree. When a decision is not necessarily related to the health of the tree, Parks is recommending that the resident present their information at Park Board, and that the Park Board and Tree Committee could determine whether the information warrants community engagement or not. On a single tree basis, that could include marking the tree and putting up signage, inviting community input for 30 days. This information could be reported back to Park Board, and they could make a recommendation to leave the tree or to remove it. There are 3 blocks on Colby that currently have significant area with no trees. Each Colby block is approximately 400 feet long. The 1800 block has 160 feet of clear area already. The 1700 block has 150 feet of clear area, and the 1200 block has 126 feet. Parks is recommending that the community support a trial planting on the 1700 block, which would require the removal of only one declining tree to complete an entire half block. The cost per half block is approximately $34,000 and would include the removal of one tree stump and root system, removing clay-filled soils and bringing in new soil that will allow the tree root system to root down deep instead of on the surface and out like we're seeing with the London planes. This would also include the cost of replanting 3 to 4 new trees that are substantial in size. With your support tonight, Parks would move forward with this half block of work in the next 1 to 2 years. If that half block trial is a success, we could determine future priorities of half block segments in the following ways. Oh yes, here's a look at the 1700 block from a variety of different views to kind of give you a better idea. Will you go forward one, Emily? So once a block has 120 feet or more with no trees standing, this is when we would begin discussions. 120 feet with no trees standing, or when 3 or fewer trees are remaining on a half block and one of the trees has a risk rating above low or a tree condition rating below fair, or if the park arborist has determined that one tree is in steady decline, and if Parks has the money to perform the work, then we would begin community outreach to begin the tree removal, remediation of soils, and replanting of new trees for that half block. If that goes well, then similar measures could be used to make decisions on a full block basis. So once a block has 200 feet or more with no trees standing, or when there are 5 or fewer trees remaining on the block and 2 of the trees has a risk rating above low or a tree condition rating below fair, or if the park arborist determines that 2 trees are in steady decline, and again, if Parks has the money to perform the work, then community outreach could begin around the removal of trees, remediation of soils, and replanting of new trees for that block. Based on today's numbers, if we decided to move forward with full block remediation, we would likely look at blocks in the following prioritized order: the 1700 block, the 1800 block, the 1200 block, the 1400, then the 15, 13, 11, 10, and finally the 1600 block. However, many factors could change with regards to this block by block priority, and for now, this is just an idea. I view this presentation as step 2 in a 3-step process. Step 1 was the presentation at Park Board in May. Park Board agreed that this initial plan makes sense. This step is to share the plan with you and specifically gain community buy-in to do that trial area on the 1700 block of Colby. And then the final step would be the systematic replacement of the Colby trees over the next several years as they continue to decline and as funds are available to replace the trees. I'm sure there are a ton of questions, comments, and concerns. So now that you've all heard the presentation, hopefully I can answer some questions for you.